Alright, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another A3 video. Today's going to be a little bit of a more in-depth DIY, as you can tell by the title of this video. Today we're actually going to be doing the carbon cleaning on my 2-liter TFSI, or 2-liter TSI, however you want to look at it. And I'm going to show you guys how to do this service on your own, because I know at Audi or Volkswagen, depending if you have a GTI or an A3 or whatever 2-liter you've got here, this is quite an expensive service to get done and can sometimes be upwards of $1,000 depending on where you go. And it's actually not that difficult. It's actually quite easy. A lot of people online will say that you need to do the walnut blasting and all that, but I'm gonna show you how to do it without any special tools other than just a shop vac and some simple tiny little screw driving picks and some not so fancy and actually really cheap valve cleaner. And the reason that we do the carbon cleaning on these engines is because they have this little fault with the positive crankcase ventilation system or valve or whatever you want to call it, that basically when it vents the crankcase pressure back into your intake system, it brings a little bit of oil with it, and that ends up getting cycled through your turbocharger, through your intercooler, and then onto your intake valves, and it makes them all black and gunked up. And I'll throw a photo of what it kind of looks like. And so we're gonna do the service interval. This is usually done every 60,000 kilometers. Some people don't even actually do this on their engines. So even if you're looking into buying an A3 or a GTI, you want to make sure if it's at the higher end of mileage that this has been done. But anyways, without babbling on anymore, let's jump into pulling the intake manifold off and doing this service. All right, so we're gonna start by removing the things that we can by hand. So I'm just gonna kind of prop the camera up here and hope it doesn't fall over. So right here is our PCV valve, and this is the pipe that goes from the intake manifold into the PCV. These are just pressure fit, so you should just be able to squish the tabs on both sides of these pipes and pull that off. Super easy, that pipe's off. Put that out of the way. Set this up on a workbench if you're not 100% sure how all this goes back together. I'm super familiar, so I don't need to. And then we're gonna go ahead and pull the fuel line out of the little retaining bracket it has here. Super easy, nothing difficult about that. And then you can kind of just pull it out of the little hook it has over here next to the coolant line and just tuck it behind the engine lift point on this side and behind the dipstick. And that should just kind of keep it out of the way for that. Next, we're gonna go ahead and disconnect the, I believe this is a cam position sensor right up on the cam cover. Just quick, easy tab, pull that guy out, not very difficult. Right below that, you have a vacuum line that is the same pressure fit style. And I don't know if you can really see it from that angle, but this guy right here, so same thing, should just be able to squish that and pop that out. And then there's a little tab on the cam cover. That's up out of the way. And then we're gonna come around to the front and we're going to start disconnecting all of these little sensors and everything. So pull that guy off. That guy should come out. Gonna pull all the connectors off the front of the throttle body, and then obviously the throttle body connector off as well. Get all those out of the way. And then there's a big cluster. I don't know if the light's gonna be good enough down here. There's 3 connectors here. You got a green one and 2 black ones. Those both have to be disconnected. So go ahead and reach down here, pop all those guys off. All right, so with those connectors disconnected, we've got a whole bunch of T30s we got to pull out that hold the coolant lines in. I've already loosened this one because I kind of jumped the gun a little bit on that. So we've got one here, we've got one under the intake manifold in the front right here, and then we've got 2 more, one here and one here, which is right next to the throttle body. So you can go ahead and take those out. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch electric ratchet. You can do it by hand. Putting them back in, I wouldn't use the power tools or even an electric ratchet because you don't want to break anything on the intake manifold, but taking it off is obviously okay. So we're gonna rip those guys out. So now with the coolant lines all disconnected, we're going to disconnect this hose right here on this valve. I've just got some channel locks because I don't have the special Volkswagen ones. And this guy should wiggle right off because my car is low mileage, but if not, you can stick a pick in the end of here and just kind of run it along the outside. Make sure you don't puncture the tube, obviously, and then pull that guy off. And then next, we're gonna go ahead and actually take the throttle pipe off, which is, I think those are 6mm or flathead bolts, just so that we can disconnect that from the manifold itself. And then we're gonna go ahead and do the high pressure fuel line, but I'll show you guys the high pressure fuel line because that's gonna leak. And I don't want you getting fuel all over your potentially hot engine and or starting a fire. So now we're gonna disconnect the high pressure fuel line, which is that guy right there. So I've already kind of loosened it off, but we've got a rag underneath it, that green boy there. And obviously 17mm, if I can get that guy in there. And we're just gonna loosen that guy off, enough to where we can stick the old fingies in there and do it off by hand. And good to go. So now all of the accessory stuff is disconnected. We can start pulling the T30s that are going into the cylinder head for the intake manifold out. So there's 5 on the top and I believe 3 on the bottom, which are gonna be an absolute pain in the ass to get out. So you're gonna wanna have an extended magnet to kind of help fish through the holes in the top of the intake manifold to grab onto the bolt so you don't drop them. All right, so now that all the bolts are out, in theory, the intake manifold should want to come off now. There we go. All right. All right, so a little precursor to what I think is honestly the worst part of this entire DIY is removing this. This is the like mounting bracket for the intake manifold, and this guy mounts kind of like down in here on the block and then to the bottom of the intake manifold. And since this is an 83 or GTI or whatever you want to call it setup, I actually had to disconnect these 2 coolant hoses just to make my life a little bit easier so I could move the hard pipes out of the way in order to even get a wrench underneath the manifold to get that out. There's a bolt on the bottom of the manifold and then one that goes into the block, which is actually a triple square, which is, anyways, it's a triple square bolt that goes into the block, and then it's just a 12mm on the bottom of the manifold. And that was what was holding me up and it took so long to get out. But other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward. The injectors came out no problem. I have a seal kit, so I'm gonna reseal my injectors as well when I put them back in. Some people do, some people don't. That's up to you. I'm not gonna do a DIY on that because there's tons. So yeah, we're just gonna start by pulling the intake runners out, which are these guys. Mine actually, oh yeah, I was just about to say mine aren't that bad, but they are pretty bad, pretty black. We're gonna put those in a non-corrosive tray because I'm gonna basically soak those guys in the valve cleaner that I have, and that'll, oh yeah, really clean those up. And it's actually like pretty wet still, some of the carbon that's in there, so I have a feeling this isn't gonna be as bad as some of the other jobs that I've done, but it still looks pretty nasty inside the engine. So I'll get we'll do a quick before and after look here. So let me just grab a light. I don't know how well you can actually see in there. Yeah, it's pretty bad in there. Like, it's not as bad as I've seen. Like, that one's pretty clear. It's got a lot of buildup on the stem. That one's got a lot of buildup kind of like just everywhere. And then this one is kind of a mix of both. So we're gonna clean that up. I'll put some before and after photos up as well with my actual phone so that you can actually see better. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna obviously start at cylinder 1 and we're gonna set the engine to top dead center using the crank. I'm not sure what size socket it is. I believe it's a 22 mil. So we're gonna start with cylinder 1, and then I'll show you guys what we're gonna do on cylinder 1, and then I'll rip through the other 4, and we'll see how it looks once this service is done. We've got some of our we got the valve cleaner in the cylinders, just kind of soaking in there. We're gonna use a couple of different angled picks, essentially, to pick all of the carbon out of the inside. I have some other stuff that I'm gonna try too to see if that works, and we obviously have all the other ports covered right now so we don't get anything else in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and start picking the crap out of this one, and I will show you guys how it looks in approximately 15 minutes of just doing that. All right, so we're about an hour or so actually into just doing cylinder 1, because I kind of wanted to just see what the best way to do this would be. It's coming along pretty good. Like, it's a lot cleaner than it was. Like, there's definitely still a little bit in there, so I'm gonna work a little bit more to get a little bit more out, but it was definitely a lot cleaner than what it was to begin with. But it's definitely a tedious process, and that's the shitty thing about doing this job. Just a lot of time. So cylinder 1 basically done, and then I'm gonna move on to the others, and then I will wrap up the video. Cylinder 4 is now done. I'm going to pull the duct tape I have covering the other cylinders out, put the runners in after I take some photos, and then we're going to compare some before and afters. I'm also going to clean up this area just a little bit to make sure that if I ever have any leaks in the future, it's easy to identify where it's coming from. So this is a good time to do that if you need to, but let's pull, and there we go. Those are all done. So we'll put the runners in, and then just gonna put it in reverse, and if I have any like pointers on getting anything in, I know getting that mounting bracket back in is gonna be a pain. So if I find an easy way to do that, I'll let you know. All right, so the carbon cleaning is now done. The car runs so much better, and there's a whole bunch of reasons as to why this service actually is so important for the 2-liter, especially. I know the 3-liter T and some other direct injection Audi and Volkswagen engines have to get this service done at some point. One of the most common symptoms for when you're actually gonna need to do carbon cleaning is cold start performance. So when you first start your car, like when you notice you have cold start issues, your idle is usually not that fantastic. I even know sometimes you can actually get an EPC light, which is electronic power control, which basically limits how much throttle you can give the car and how much performance it's actually going to give you. This is obviously due to the amount of carbon that actually fills your valve runners or your valve channel or whatever you want to call it, and this just kind of disrupts the airflow, doesn't give you the proper airflow into your engine, which can also actually lead to a misfire. So sometimes when people are chasing misfires, you know, you replace spark plugs, coil packs, some people even go as far as injectors, and in some cases it can actually be because of excessive carbon buildup. There are ways to prevent the carbon buildup, one of which being a mod that I've had for a very long time now, which is obviously a catch can, which helps filter what goes back into your intake system rather than just your PCV sending everything it can back through your intake. Obviously in colder temperatures, a catch can isn't really gonna give you much more of a benefit, as it will give you more of a headache just due to condensation in your catch can and a multitude of other reasons. But in warmer climates, definitely one of those mods that would be worth an investment. Another one that I'm going to be looking into in the future, so you're going to want to subscribe for this one, because I know there's not a lot of tutorials on this one either. I'm going to do a lot to cover what that will look like in terms of performance gains for my car, but that would be methanol injection, water methanol. The 2-liter TSI is direct injected. Well, no fuel actually goes over the valves, so it's not port injected, it's direct injected into the cylinder. So by introducing water methanol injection, you now are essentially putting, for lack of scientific discussion, a fuel now over your valves, which will help with preventing carbon buildup in the future. So I hope this video helps some of you save some money and learn a couple things and get your hands dirty doing some tedious Volkswagen maintenance. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. We're almost at 700 subscribers at the time of filming this. I would really like to hit 1,000. We're only 300 away and the channel's actually growing so fast right now. Like, I think right now I'm averaging something about 100 subscribers a month. Hopefully by, you know, the end of January, like mid-February next year, I have 1,000. If before then, that would be even more fantastic. Anyways, guys, peace out. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.